What is going on, everyone? My name's Boit, and I'm back with some more Age of Mythology. The Titans action spawning in the top of the map in the red color, playing as Set. His name is Joe. His opponent today in the blue color, playing as Hades. His name is Mariano. The map is Blue Lagoon. It's best of 3 series for the Champions League. Every game at this point seriously matters. Every series matters. Every game probably matters as well. If you win, if you lose 0-2 versus lose 1-2, that could be the difference between 4th and 5th place. For these players in particular, Mariano here, unfortunately, he's had a pretty decent run thus far. He's got a lot of difficult games in front of him with the rest of his group, I believe, or maybe he's finished them all. I can't exactly remember where he's at, but he did get a failed to show up, a miss in the game against Nullus in his game against Nullus, in the series against Nullus, which means where a loss is normally worth 1 point, a miss is worth -1 point. The reason we do this is because people's time, you have to respect people's time. When you schedule a game and you don't show up and you don't let anyone know that you're not showing up, that person has to sit there and that person has to wait for you to show up. So he did get hit with a miss, and therefore he's actually got himself an even more difficult time getting into the top 4 here. He basically has to come... I would say he basically has to get wins, otherwise he doesn't get in. He's going to be definitely not in the top 4 if he would have barely made the top 4 otherwise. So he is desperately in need of wins. Now, the one thing to know about Mariano, and one of the reasons why he's definitely a contender in this tournament, is he has arguably got one of the more clean Greek. He's one of the cleanest Greek macro players in the tournament. He knows the macro really well. He knows the strategy really well, and he knows how to quote unquote abuse his god to the nth degree. And we say abuse, but really what we mean is play to his god's strengths as best as he possibly can. Things like utilizing his Chiron for max value, utilizing his Sentinels for max value, utilizing Restoration for max value, finding the right unit compositions to build against his opponent. But he's not. But he is up against someone who I think a lot of us know, and someone who's incredibly strong with the Egyptians in Joe. Joe's still hell-bent on building temples with several villages, even though I've literally told him that doing this loses resources. But I can actually tell you exactly what happens when you do this. So if you build the temple with 1 villager, it costs around about 50 seconds. It costs 50 seconds worth of gather time. If you build the temple with 2 villages, it costs, I believe, 80 seconds or 70 seconds. One of the two. I can't remember exactly if it's 70 seconds or 80 seconds worth of gather time. So it takes 2 villages 35 seconds or 40 seconds or something. Eventually, we're going to see Egyptian players realize that, hey, our god's not that weak. We're just not playing them to their absolute strength. We are seeing Hands of the Pharaoh coming through for Joe, which actually means he's going for a early Shifting Sands play. This is insane. Why is this insane? Because he's playing against Hades, who can literally utilize Sentinels to block every single little bit of damage, though we're seeing some villagers retreat away. The scout coming through here for Joe. Joe is arguably going to get some damage done here. He's getting 1 priest out. Where's the other priest at? Grabbing himself the elephant in the center of the map as the hyena here sees exactly what's going on there, retreating back. Does he have himself vision? He does have that vision in, as well as the villagers are going to be retreating back home, as somehow, some way, Mariano is sniffing this out. As the villagers retreat back, the Shifting Sands, if it comes through, he's not going to get many villager kills here at all. They can just garrison into the sentry tower and make a run away from it as the villagers get back home, and Joe gets no kills here. This is so bad for Joe. All the villagers back alive, not even using sentinels here at this point. One villager over here going to be retreating back up to the top side of the map, and also most likely going to be living here as well. And that's insane. I'm team Shadowfax in the chat here. How does Mariano sense that that's another villager just barely survives there? How unlucky can one Joe be? My golly gosh. The reason why I say, how does Mariano sense this, is because in this matchup, going for a Shifting Sands set play is, generally speaking, suicide. Because you don't get damage done 9 times out of 10. And we actually see that here. Well, you get a little bit of damage done, but generally speaking, it's not really worth it. As the army's starting to move forward, the hero's out, the Minotaur is out. But here's the thing: if the set play just goes for a fast second town center, that's standard here. 402 fast second town center, and if I do that, and my opponent here moves around, I have to think that Mariano scouted it. I have to think. We have another question here. Wasn't the Pharaoh nerfed versus Vild? Yes, the Pharaoh was nerfed versus villagers. But if you get this upgrade, which Joe did get, the Hands of the Pharaoh goes back to doing max damage versus villagers. So it costs 75 resources and it takes 20 seconds to build, but it's something that happens as the Pharaoh priest moving in onto this position, trying to take out that Chiron as it does retreat back. Villagers onto the hunt here in the middle of the map. 2 town centers for Joe and a second town center coming up here for Mariano as well. So after all is said and done, Mariano a little bit behind on the villager count. But Joe here loses out on a ton of resources in this game based on that early game attack. Think about the difference when his town center finished at around about 6 minutes here versus it could have been up at about, if you use your Shifting Sands on your villagers to get the town center up, you can actually get it up at about 4:30-ish, maybe even faster than 4:30. So 6 minutes versus 4:30, that's 1 minute, 30 seconds worth of village training time, which equals something like 6 villagers. So he could be 6 villagers in front of where he is right now. You're telling me that a Shifting Sands play is worth it? I'm telling you I don't think it is. I'm telling you I don't think it is. I think that the Shifting Sands play is not... It's basically dead. And it should have been dead many eons ago, even before the nerf, because it's better to just Shifting Sands your villagers onto a town center and build it rather than going for a villager kill. Or 3. Unless you pick off like a ton of villagers, it's not worth it. So maybe picking off like a Norse villagers and an ox cart can be worth it. But apart from that, craziness here from Joe. But we now move into the next stage. Joe has to take a deep breath and kind of work out what he needs to do next. He has to have some nice hunt on his town center. One of the huge advantages of Set versus the other Egyptian gods is that you can empower a town center and have a ton of villagers gathering on that town center. So much so that it's actually worth it here to take these 9 villagers and bring them over to eat this elephant so that your Pharaoh is effectively empowering, what would this be, 21 villagers on a town center at plus 20% means that would be something like, instead of 21 villagers, effective villagers, you'd have something like 25.2 or something effective villagers on that town center. As we do see now, Joe, he's going through Nephthys, and we'll see where his next port of call is going to be. Now, for me, when I'm playing Set against Hades, you have to be considering what your opponent's doing. So he's got himself an archery range, he's got himself a stable. If he's going for this build, I'm more than happy to go mass archers here, mass chariot archers against this composition, against a Hades player. But is that what Joe's going to be doing? He's still grabbing his hunt. He could go for a timing attack here, attempt to find himself a fast mythic as an idea. He does have villagers, a ton of villagers on gold over here, not very many on wood. The other option would be to drop like 2 Migdol strongholds and maybe try and make elephants as an idea. Might be absolutely crazy as we're starting to see some walls coming down to defend this gold mine. Fundamentals, Joe. He knows them. Find a weakness in your position and act. Always going to be good, as we do see a Migdol stronghold coming up, but Joe is going to be spotted here as the villagers retreat back. Jumping through to the town center, going to find a different location to drop that Migdol stronghold. I do like the idea of the Migdol stronghold getting thrown up here to kind of protect the giraffe so we can eat those for somewhat for free, as the Toxoid is immediately going to be trying to harass that Pharaoh down. The units are not in position here for Joe to defend, as a couple of villages will go down. Nice micro there from Joe to pull back those villages under attack, but he does still lose 2 as the Pharaoh gets harassed there by the Chiron on the back, as the units do have to retreat back. Migdol Stronghold will get up here for Joe, and Mariano has to pull into his home base here as the walls coming up onto this position, doing everything that they can. Migdol Stronghold is up, and Joe is going to continue along in this game, grabbing himself those giraffe, and all is calm for a little bit. But Mariano, he's going to be going for that heroic age really, really soon. You can see he's got the resources, 47 villages. He's got the villager lead here as well after all of the chaos has settled. And he wants a heroic age. Aphrodite here going to be huge curse onto the chariot archers of Joe, as it looks like at this point Joe's not really making all too much. It looks like he is going for those elephants. So I will repeat this: if you do want to go for elephants here with Set in the heroic age, you have to throw down 2 Migdols. They take too long to train, even with the Pharaoh empowering it. 15 seconds to train an elephant. What is the boost of that after all is said and done? Build rate. Unit training time, minus 30%. So you're looking at 3 seconds, so 11.5 seconds war elephants. It's pretty fast, in all honesty. But if you have 2 Migdols, you can build a lot more elephants out. And I think if you're also training giraffe out of the Pharaoh, after all is said and done, you can actually afford that. You can actually afford mass elephants straight away with the Pharaoh empowering the town center as an idea. Could be an idea. I'm gonna have to try it out sometime. As the gate getting broken down here, Mariano trying to control the map here with those walls, but he's not going to be able to do so all too easily. More chariot archers coming out, as Joe's going to be attempting to put some pressure at some point here onto Mariano. The hardest part about this matchup from the perspective of the set is basically, how do you get the gold staff? That's got to be your question going into this game, is how do you get the gold staff? At this moment here, Mariano's gold is back behind this town center. So the gold staff comes from breaking through this wall and pushing in to this back position, while also securing this town center here. If he can manage to do that, as we are seeing a 3rd town center coming up for Joe. Chariot archers getting pushed away, as Mariano is more than happy to chase these with his Hippocon at this point. Joe here about to get himself a town center, about to put pressure over here. If he can get 4 town centers, that's another way forward in this game. Potentially could use ancestors to try and make that happen. As the village is getting a gold mine over here, as also a side build comes in. Ancestors gets dropped as the curse comes down, and it looks like the curse just hit elephants there. He takes 3 units down, but those are all war elephants. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not actually sure. Mercenary cavalry coming in, as Joe knows how important this town center is. But I'll tell you now, 4 town center set versus 2 town center Hades, that's actually advantage Hades. You can still win from Hades in that position, as we do see the restoration coming in. So long as the technologies and the game is still moving at a fairly equal pace in terms of economy, the Hades player can easily push out and beat the set players in that position. So this is not actually a win condition by any stretch for Joe. He's still going to need to get economic damage to find a win after he gets that 4th town center. As Joe now pulled back. He's at 105 of 145 population. He's still only got the 1 Migdol stronghold, getting himself the heavy chariots here in this game, as those Hippocon are now going to be looking to put some pressure onto this position here, as Mariano's already got himself the side builds up. And honestly, this is what makes Egyptian so difficult to play against Greek, is these side builds. And the answer to this is you can't really defend against it after it's set up easily. You have to get your siege over there. You've got to send units over there to take out the buildings. But you can defend it before it's there by getting your wall set up. And there was definitely time here for Joe to send some villagers over here and get this wall set up over on this position, potentially from this wall here through to the side, this wall over here to block this off. Definitely was a possibility here for Joe earlier in the game. But now that he hasn't set it up and the buildings are all up, Joe's gold mine is taken taken out. He does have plenty of gold down on the other side of the map, but he will have to clean that side build up at some point here, as Mariano is more than happily taking this fight underneath the Migdol stronghold at this point, because look at Joe. He's at 130 pop. Mariano's 133 pop. And Joe just does not have the units here to really defend this. Mariano will be pushing back here. He gets his town center set up. He has his sentinels up. He's in a completely fine position. 66 villages only at this point, though. Maybe he's forgotten to train some villagers out of all of his town centers or something, but he definitely needs to start pumping those out to get himself to full population here. In terms of villages, it is vitally important. But it looks like the food situation for Mariano is struggling ever so slightly here, as Joe does have one more timing left up his sleeve, and that is the Tornado or the Meteor. Now, at this point here, I would probably argue that your best bet from this position onwards for set has to be to go through Thoth, has to be to go for Thoth Elephants here. You don't really have a win here with Horus. Even with the spearmen and things like that, it's not going to be working out to the best of your ability as set. So we're going to have to see Joe probably attempt to go through Horus if he can manage to do so. As yet again, Mariano just says, I don't mind fighting underneath town center fire. That's the fortified town center at that, dealing 18 damage per second. As we do see a mercenary cavalry gets trained, and Mariano pulls back here as a fortress going to be coming up on this position. Mariano's just buying time at this point. He's trying to prevent Joe from hitting the next age and things like that. So we'll see, will Joe go for the Horus or will Joe go for the Thoth? Horus could potentially give Joe the town center. So too could Thoth, just depending. And we do indeed see Horus. But the problem with Horus is you don't find any advantages here after the Avenger, after the Avenger and the Tornado, because you don't really want Spearmen here at all. And you kind of want to be making the Rhinos of Set as well in this position, so the favor doesn't really get spent all too much on anything. In fact, maybe you also don't... I don't even know. I don't know which god's better. It doesn't really matter. Getting into the Mythic Age is actually really important for Set, not for the god powers, but just for unlocking Rhinoceros of Set. As we see heavy cavalry coming through, carpenters coming through. How are the upgrades looking for Mariano? He doesn't have Masons, so that means the Tornado will be able to kill a town center here, unless Mariano gets Masons very, very fast once he sees the Horus. But I imagine Joe will drop that Tornado straight away, as those Chariot Archers trying to fight against the Toxotes as best as they can. There's no armory upgrades here for either player thus far, and this is mind-boggling to me to see Joe with this many resources and him not getting himself copper shields. If you get copper shields, look at the amount of HP. 108 HP with an extra 10% against Toxotes pushes that even more. So they just, like, I don't understand. You have to get that copper shields upgrade, copper mail upgrade. It's so important in this matchup for both players, actually. But I'm obviously understand by Hades player being greedy because he wants to go through Hephaestus here and enjoy the really cheap upgrades. But sometimes it's actually more expensive to delay it because you're going to lose more units because of delaying it, right? As we do finally see the copper shields coming through for Mariano there. As Horus comes in, we do see some units starting to push through. Tornado getting dropped down onto this position, but it does get a little bit of damage done onto the fortress over there. Will it be able to kill off the town center or not is the big question, as the War Elephant's starting to pop out. The Petropolis taking down the buildings over here as well, as more units streaming through. The town center down to 500 HP. Is it going to fall? 666, it does end up falling there. Joe manages to pick off the town center. Can he continue to put pressure in and prevent the town center from going back up? Mariano going to immediately throw that one back up here as the Petropolis starting to put pressure forward. We've got the Rhinos coming through. Did Joe get himself feral? No feral upgrade just yet. He's got himself 42 favor in the bank. We'll see what he's going to be using with that. He's also started a trade route here at this point. No contesting of that bottom corner for the time being here for Joe either, as the Avengers trying to take down the Petropolis here. Town center is just about back up as the Avenger almost down. The Achilles gets cleaned up. The Petropolis still getting taken out as the Villager's going to move over and start shanking this as best as he possibly can. As Mariano left with one last Petropolis, but the town center now back up, and Mariano lives another day here after all of the pressure that Joe's managed to to inflict. As you can look at how important these rhinos are. Imagine you're spending those next 46 favor on rhinos. They only cost 6 favor. It's incredibly cheap. Well, not 46, 36, and get feral as well. You can start really putting pressure in and getting towers set up on this position to hold here. As Mariano, he's on 80 villages. He's starting to make donkey caravans, but he's struggling to get his population out at this point. This is such a critical moment here for Joe. But Joe, he doesn't have the catapults out. He needs catapults here to put pressure on as the Petropolis still going after this town center. Joe needs to get some villages here to start repairing this one back up. As the Hippocon getting cleaned up very, very fast here by Joe's mass heavy chariots as he's trying to make the mercenary cavalry work here. He does have a kind of a fairly rare map. This is super advantage Egyptian, is that he's got the town center, third town center close to his opponent's third town center, which means he can spam mercenary into this position instead of making the towers. But honestly, towers, mercenary, I would prefer towers over the mercenary from both sides here. As Joe gets pushed back, he's still only on the one Migdol stronghold, and he hasn't decided to make any of those incredibly important rhinos in this position, which would definitely help him stay alive here. Imagine if he could just build, I don't know, 5 rhinos here, he'd be able to hold this position much, much easier, and Mariano would not be able to get that population back up. Town center here trying to be kept alive as we see another Migdol stronghold getting dropped down here as the siege tower is going to move over to attempt to either take down the... Are they going to take down the Petropolis? Yes, they go after the Petropolis. Yes. Not the wall. The wall's got 8 HP left. As more Petropoli rolling in to try and take this town center down with Joe getting himself up. Another Migdol stronghold that's going to be a really, really big assistance here. Irrigation coming through, fortified town centers for Mariano as well. As the town center staying alive here with 800 HP. Trying to repair it back up with that Pharaoh. It's a very, very huge investment in economy here from Joe to keep this town center alive. And I think Mariano realizes that. Pharaoh empowering 11 villages idle as the Petropolis is going to continue to take this one down. There's no... there seems to be a very lack of gold at this moment. We also see villagers coming through here for Mariano to set up some side builds here to take control of the corner of the map as well. As the Pharaoh gets pulled back, the town center getting closer and closer to fall here as the walls are basically set up. The villagers, where are they going? Joe's got no gold remaining at this point as the town center falls, and somehow a heroic age Hades is pushing back the Mythic age set of Joe here, as he's just not able to get to pop. He's at 140 or 140 population now. The village is retreating back. Migdol stronghold going down, as well as Shadoof coming through, Plow coming through for Joe as well. He's now out of the hunt at this point. He could create Hippo of Set at this point if he really wants to get some more food income, but it looks like he's not able to. I mean, the other option is he's at 80 villages, so he doesn't, and he's got 10 camel caravans as well, so he doesn't really need food. He can just put everyone onto wood and onto gold to spam chariot archers, but he is continuing to get pushed back at this point as the villagers here taking down that one villager. Moves at 4.56 speed though, so he can actually retreat away from the shanking of those Egyptian laborers, but not able to quite do so as the Toxoid is getting some damage done onto the camel caravans on that position as well. As the Migdol stronghold now up for Joe. Bronze shields coming through as well, as Joe's still trying to defend on this position. Pharaoh gets taken down. More Petropoli moving in to try and take that Migdol stronghold out here as well. And Joe is just in a very tough position, because look at this. Mariano, both players are about to have bronze shield. So bronze shield chariot archers versus bronze shield heavy Toxotes. Who wins? Probably the Toxotes. The reason why the mass chariot archer strat for set works is because you can mass rhinos to tank for your chariot archers, but Joe is refusing to make more monuments, refusing to spam rhinos of set, and this army of the Hades is just pushing in and making life so absurdly difficult for Joe here, and he's still spreading out on the map. He's put buildings everywhere here. Once Mariano hits the Mythic Age, you can immediately make Gastrophetes if he gets himself the Burning Pitch upgrade to start targeting down the main town center of Joe. But I don't think he even cares, because he can literally just roll through this. He's got 5 Petropolis out to start putting pressure onto that town center of Joe, as well as now the villagers of Mariano say, I don't even need Mythic Age. Let me get that fourth town center here as he moves into the main location. Doesn't quite have the resources to build it up just yet, because he is trading pretty vehemently in the main area of the map here, as Joe's still trying to defend here with his champion chariots. But Joe says in that moment that he is too far behind. He doesn't really have a gold mine at this position in this moment. And Mariano finds the win after all is said and done. Beautiful game played here by Mariano. Played perfectly in the early game. He sniffed out that shifting sands play by Joe, and after all is said and done, that's kind of all you need to do is survive the shifting sands, and you find yourself a gigantic advantage. Take a look at the post game here and look at the resource total when that shifting sands happened. It was relatively equal, but normally the villagers die, and there was just 0 villagers picked off here. There was a significant amount of idle town center time that happened from that shifting sands, but was that just because he had no food, or that was because he was building excuse me, that's not even because of the shifting sands. That's just because of the heroes that came out of the town center. So the shifting sands literally did no damage to Mariano. And then after that, Mariano played a really nice game. Joe managed to get himself that 3rd town center, put some good damage on with that tornado, but he just didn't have the follow-up to keep the town center down. And I do think if he went in for some rhinos here, if he had himself a handful more monuments, he only has the 1 monument here, get himself the monument to the soldiers, monument to the villagers, he'd probably be able to, and even maybe monument to the priests, he'd probably be able to break through this position with rhinos at this point. I don't think this army of the Hades is quite strong enough to beat that, but he doesn't make it happen. And in the end there, Mariano gets the dub. If you guys enjoyed this game, please consider hitting the follow on the Twitch. If you're on the YouTube, hit that subscribe button. And I'll see you guys in the next game.